Thanks to everyone who's joining in from different time zones. I can also tell, seeing the attendee list up front. If you don't know who I am, I'm Martijn. I'm a senior director here at Quadrant Consulting. For the past 5 years, I've been consulting B2B companies with complex buying environments on anything, let's say, trying to help them get fit to grow, mostly on the go-to-market side, also on the commercial efficacy side, and also for a large part on marketing transformation-related topics. Let's start here. So, value propositions, of course, that's a whole topic in itself. I would argue most companies don't struggle to write one single good value proposition for a given product. They actually struggle to write 50. This is, of course, speaking around companies that have huge product portfolios, like some of the companies we saw on the slide before, companies that offer a wide range of different products, maybe across different business lines or product lines, service lines, where, let's say, one product company does definitely not fit the description of those companies anymore. So let's look today at how we develop good value propositions at scale and what role AI can play in helping us do that. We're going to look into value proposition development at scale. Why do they break? We're going to standardize the process in terms of developing them. Then we're going to scale parts of the process using AI, and I'm going to show you a little live demo as to how that can be done. So first and foremost, let's get a quick definition on what a value proposition is, because ask 10 people, you get 12 definitions kind of situation. The way that we look at a value proposition here is we see it as a structured commercial argument that clearly defines why a customer should buy your product in relation to a real customer's problem. So, few important things here, right? This is not a copywriting exercise. This is not a tagline or a slogan. A value proposition is a structured commercial argument that explains the why a customer should buy your product in relation to something that customer is actually facing in their day-to-day. Cool. Then let's have a look at value props and why they break at scale. So as I said, one product, usually no problem. Developing for 50 products or more, absolute chaos. Why is that the case? I would say 3 things mostly. There's something around volume. Obviously, the sheer quantity of value props that need to be developed if you have large product portfolios. But also sometimes value props need versioning for different kind of customer segments based on different use cases or even different geographies and the likes. At the same time also, there can be a variety of value propositions living in your organization, and that's mostly because there is no central organ being fully responsible or clear mandate to develop value propositions in the organization. Then product says this story, marketing says this, and then sales says this, and the website even says another. And then there's something around velocity, and this is more like commercial activities. They run at such a high pace, whether it's the speed of new product launches or marketing campaigns and how long it takes to develop them, versus sales needs that change maybe on a daily basis, sometimes even, or on a quarterly basis. All these things can outpace the capacity of developing value props. And this story is the same also for those attending from a B2C point of view. This force applies in B2C as well, and sometimes it's even bigger when the volume of products is even higher in the B2C space. So this is a problem we face almost in any big company that operates a product portfolio than more than a few products. And what does broken at scale look like? Broken at scale, I would argue, there is definitely a place here where I see a lot of companies develop value propositions on the back of the product development process. So product is being developed, is ready almost to be shipped as a first version, and only then we start to think in the commercial argument and we start to kind of reverse engineer what that value proposition actually looks like. And then at the same time, as we saw before, sometimes actually product does their own value narrative based on what they have been developing. Then marketing tries to interpret the value proposition for the core of communication, and then sales even creates their own version again because they hit, let's say, a reality talk to customers, and then they try to version it out to make it make sense for that specific sales conversation. Predominantly, we see, right, that the development process of value propositions is sequential fragmented, happens on the back of product development, and then different kind of commercial teams start to run with their own kind of value proposition takes. That being said, the reverse engineering often leads to either the value proposition being super technical or sometimes too generic when we try to come to the essence and then lose all the details in in the process. At the same time, also, we often see there's no single source of truth, right? Everyone runs their own version. And we also miss out on a big opportunity here where the inputs that we use to develop the value proposition could not only, let's say, inform the value proposition itself or the pitch, but also inform the product. So what we would like to do is this actually results in a real cost where we might confuse customers, leading to longer sales cycles and potentially lose deals if we are not able to clearly articulate the value of what we're trying to bring to market. What we would love to do instead here would be to develop the value proposition alongside the product development process itself. Maybe not directly at the start, but bring it early on into the product development process to make sure that we have some things going back and forth here and we can bounce off of each other, trying to get that commercial argument in early. So the product development process benefits from that. And we on the commercial side, in terms of developing the argument, also benefit from that. Awesome. So from that point of view also, just wanted to say that developing value propositions at scale, it's not a scale problem. It's really a process and operating model problem. And that's where I see three main things happening again and again. There's no structured inputs flowing into the development process of value propositions itself. There's no standard framework being used for developing the value proposition itself. And there's no scalable workflow in which we go from end to developing a value proposition. And for this, honestly, you don't need more time or FTEs to solve this problem. You need an operating system. And that's what I would like to look at with you today. And then what AI can play, what role in this operating system. So when it comes to standardizing the VP development process, let's look at what an operating system could look like. And for me, that's three layers that make that scale possible, three layers that make up the operating system. Something around structured inputs, something around a standardized framework, and something about a repeatable workflow. And these three things, they have to work together, and they can work together in a way that looks a little like this. So all the way at the top, we have the first layer, which is the structured inputs. And here we would ideally take whatever framework you like. We generally tend to work with simple 4C kind of mapping to make sure that we cover as many aspects as possible, but trying to get all the inputs relevant to the product in terms of in which category does it operate, what does that market look like, trends, etc. Then on the customer side, who is the target customer here, what defines them, what are their needs and the likes, what does the competitive landscape look like for this product, not only in terms of direct product competition, but also in terms of competitive, let's say, situations. Do target customers actually use a solution like this already? If not, then that's a whole different story. If they do use a situation, then what's the level of sophistication there? Do they use something like manual? Or do they use something completely different? Or actually, do they use something that is comparable to our product? These are very important competitive insights to understand directly in relation to the customer. And then, of course, on the company side here for us, that's mostly the product. What is the product? What are the features and the proof, et cetera, et cetera. But something here to structure the inputs that will help us craft the value proposition. Once we have that in place, we have the framework. We operate here with a specific framework that has proven to work quite nicely. But of course, you can here adjust, see whatever framework works for you. The idea is, of course, that this framework becomes a very kind of, let's say, shared source of truth for developing value propositions in your organization. Let's dive into what this framework looks like in a second. But level 2, a framework. Level 3, the workflow. And this is really the process, right? So we have the inputs that should inform the framework. And that framework is part of a workflow that, for example, starts with a brief where we gather all that input. Then we do a draft based on the framework of the first draft of the value proposition. And then we review that value proposition with the experts required. Then we try to validate it. Does it land both in the front line with sales, but also with customers? And then we activate and deploy it everywhere. And that means we have one source of truth for a value proposition that can then be translated into whatever kind of customer touchpoint it should live in, whether that's a website, marketing campaign, sales decks, talk tracks, proposals, and the likes. All of that based on one single value proposition source of truth. All right. Now we have an idea of the 3 layers of the value proposition operating system. Let's super quickly dive into each of these layers just to have a bit of meat on the bone as to what these things are. So level 1, the inputs. Here it's so important that we always make sure we have a solid set, let's say a solid foundation of insights at hand to develop our value proposition on. And this is as basically almost anything in life, right? If you put garbage in, you get garbage out. So here, the most important thing for us is structure. So let's say for developing a value proposition, we need to gather a lot of insights. For example, we have done market research to develop this product. We've done some customer interviews, or we have seen customer interviews from before that we can reuse. We have win-loss data on similar products, or on this product if we need to update the value proposition, whatever it may be, and from wherever it may come, from product, from sales, from marketing, wherever in the organization. We then gather all of that and try to synthesize the insights, or structure the insights, at least to start with. And let's say we structure it here according to those 4 C's: category, customer, competition, and company. And that also helps us very clearly to understand, okay, now we have laid out the insight framework in front of us, which insights here are missing or which are ambiguous. So we can ask questions back to, for example, product sales or marketing to help get those insights surfaced. And then we have the structured inputs ready for value prop development. And I can imagine you may be like, okay, how do we do that for a 50+ product portfolio? That sounds like a lot of work. Yes, but we'll come back to that. This is where AI at least can help very much in terms of structuring the insights, of course, to get us going from there. But most important, if you spend a bit of time here, you will really see what that benefits you later down in the process. So when inputs are properly structured, the value proposition almost writes itself later on. Almost. For that, let's have a look at the second layer here. And that's the framework. So shared framework here. So, and this is an example of a framework that we use, right? You can use different frameworks. I would say what you shouldn't be using is the value proposition canvas. That doesn't really help you make decisions. But let's have a look for the sake of this operating system example at the framework that we use to clarify what we're trying to do here. And again, for us, it's really important that the value proposition doesn't become a copywriting exercise. It's really a structured commercial argument for us. So again, just to iterate the definition of a value proposition, a structured commercial argument that clearly defines why a customer should buy your product in relation to a real customer's problem. If we keep that in mind, then we can build a framework around that to make choices. And this is very important. We have already structured, let's say, the insights. Now we need to craft the value proposition itself. Let's make some hard choices here on what is the right things to do for this specific product. So we always start with the customer side of things. Who is the customer and why are they relevant in the first place? And only then we look at ourselves, at the product. What is it and why would people care and what are the outcomes of it and the likes? So you really have to, let's say, earn the right to speak about your product by really understanding, showing you understand your customer situation. So always start on the customer side, and we like to do that according to 4 different buckets. The company type, so on the ICP side, try and define that. The buyer user, who is that in the company type? What people would be buying from you? What is their actual job? What is their day-to-day? What is the context that they operate in? And within that context, what do they run into? What's their problem? What's their pain, their friction? And this needs to be crystal clear on the actual target customer. And probably you will get into situations here where you're like, but our product could be sold to 1,200 different kinds of company types and personas. But this is about making choices. Because if you try to be anything to everyone, you become nothing to no one, right? So we want to make sure, and this is in relation to whatever market research you have done to develop the product in the first place, we need to make some choices here on whom we are targeting here with this product, or at least with this value proposition. And then the shop is always open to anyone, of course, but we have to make some choices here. And when we have made those choices on the customer, we can really start to concretely position our product against that customer's situation. We have to make sure that we define what is the category of the product, What is their, let's say, what is the box they see you in? What's the mental shelf they take you off in the supermarket? What do they buy you as, and what do they compare you to when they go out and search for alternatives? Then the capability of the product. What does your product unlock? What brings the customer from a 0 to 100 by using your product? And how is that capability, let's say, delivered? That's the feature part. That's the proof part. How does the product works? And then what do you get out of it? What's the measurable value? If you follow that, you really start to structure a commercial argument that hopefully makes sense, but also that can be reviewed properly, a framework that consistently spits out the same way of looking at value proposition decisions. And from that, we can also draft, for example, a value proposition statement, and we have the ammunition to translate this into whatever kind of, let's say, customer touch point across the website, sales decks, and so on. This becomes our value proposition source of truth. Let's super quickly look at an example here for what that could look like. So let's take Pleo. Maybe most of you will know it. It's a really cool spend management tool. It's Denmark founded, operating in all of Europe. I think it reached unicorn status a few years ago. What this could look like for Pleo. So if we go through the framework here on the customer side, ICP, company type, probably enterprises with distributed cross-country spend. Buyer users could be the CFO, finance operations, and procurement. Their context is, let's say, spend is growing, but governance is lagging within in the company. And right now, there is too much manual work and low visibility to keep track of spend. Well, here comes Pleo. Pleo is a spend management tool, so people know exactly in what box to put it. And with Pleo, you get policy-controlled spend at scale without finance chasing receipts. And how is that done? With cards, with limits, receipt automation, and also integrations. And what you get out of it is less admin, better control, and visibility. This is very high level, of course, simplified, but just for the sake of showing the argument, you'll probably go in a bit more detail for your products, but to have an understanding here. And then this you could translate into a value proposition statement, and there's many ways to do that. We have some recommendations for sure as to how to do that, but for the sake of the example here, this is what the statement could look like based on the decisions we have made here in the framework. All right. Now we have a bit of an idea as to what this framework layer could look like. It's really important that you, for your company, of course, define what should this framework be for us, and how should we structure this value proposition so we can use this as one source of truth for all that we need to use it for later down the line. And that brings us to the workflow. So now we have talked a bit about inputs that inform the framework. Where does this framework sit? How is it used in an end-to-end process? Let's have a brief look at that too. So most important here, right, if we want to get to any level of scale, whether AI is part of it or not, we need something that is repeatable. So we generally tend to work with a high-level workflow that we may detail or not, but high level of 5 steps: the brief, then draft, review, validate, and activate. On the brief side, it's always about the structured input. We gather what is there and we synthesize it, we structure it so it's always ready to identify the gaps and ready as input for the first draft, where we develop that based on the inputs that we have gathered there. Then we get the right people involved to review the value proposition, probably people from the product side, maybe from sales, maybe from marketing, maybe whoever in the organization has a valid opinion to bring on the table here. But testing it against compellingness. Is it compelling? Is it true? Obviously, you want to deliver what you promise. And then is it differentiated? And differentiation, of course, here, very important. Again, differentiation is not per se only relevant against competitors that offer similar products, but also against the actual situation the target user is actually in today. So differentiation can also lie in maybe they're currently not using any similar tool at all. So then you have to explain that, of course. And differentiation in big product portfolios can also lie in, is it differentiated enough from the rest of our portfolio? And that's, of course, where many companies with large portfolios also bump into. All right, then after review, we dive into validate. Does this value proposition actually land? So testing it in the front line with, for example, sales, and also in the best case, if possible, with customers. That's not always possible, but some level of validation, super important. And then we're ready to deploy it across any kind of customer-facing touchpoints, right? So what this workflow does is it separates your commercial thinking and decision-making from writing and crafting. So your experts, they focus on the choices and judgment and not the writing. And this is already where we find, let's say, benefits of scale and benefits of having a process, a standardized methodology in place to develop value propositions. So one method, that's the core here, right? Multiple expressions, and we have seen that it translates into anything on the marketing asset sides and anything on the sales collateral side. Scaling with AI, now the interesting part here. So we have understood now that we need a standardized methodology in the first place to being able to develop value proposition at scale. That's still quite a big human undertaking, a lot of time and resources spent on that, but at least we're going to cut down the time heavily that is being spent on developing value propositions by having this methodology in place. But now there's parts of that process that we can put AI into play to help us scale this even better and even more. And here, AI is really not the strategist. AI is the executor for you. And I see generally two failure modes where AI is kind of being used as magic to value propositions, like just ask Claude or ChatGPT to write the value prop for this product, and then you get super generic, undifferentiated output at the end. At the same time, I also see that, but AI cannot do this for us because AI can understand our customers. That's true, but that's, of course, where the input structuring becomes absolutely vital and essential. If you feed it the right things, it will absolutely have a great ammunition to work with, and then you still go through the review and validation rounds afterwards. So AI for us is a production scaler here. It's really, really good at getting to first drafts at speed, where then the experts have the time to review and refine and make the actual commercial decisions here. So with AI, the methodology doesn't change. We just speed up part of the workflow. And what part of the workflow do we speed up? To start with, I'd say for today's example, mostly the first two parts here on the briefing side. So that is on reviewing materials, identifying gaps in the materials, the insights, the inputs for the value proposition development, and structuring those insights. And then at the same time, of course, then we have that insight base ready. Then we can start to develop a draft based on those insights. I think this is the key place to start. Because AI right now, it starts to be able to do parts of it, but right now AI doesn't yet really replace commercial judgment. Like we still need to go in ourselves and understand, is this compelling, true, and differentiated enough? Customer validation, of course, it needs to be distributed to customers. Does this actually land? And the strategic choices still kind of sit with us here in the commercial teams. What do we want to be known for, and how does it relate to the rest of the portfolio? Super important decisions to be made. So today, mostly this part, we can look in a second also where AI could be deployed beyond this. But this is, I would say, the starting point. And here the secret isn't prompting, it's preloading your AI setup. So you don't want to go in to Claude or ChatGPT or Copilot and say, write me a value proposition for our product X. Then AI reflects the internet's average and you'll get something very generic, forgettable, and absolutely will lead to, let's say, heavy rewriting and so forth. You want to go into something that's more configured. And so preload the AI with your methodology, your segment definitions, potentially connected even to your PIM systems and more. And that is where AI starts to reflect your methodology. And that's where it gets really cool and useful. And whether the AI you use here is, let's say, you can build a simple GPT. I'll show you that in a sec. In ChatGPT, you can build a scale. In Claude, you can build an agent in Copilot, whatever you prefer, but you can do this, let's say, systematically. And what we have seen with our clients is that this really cuts down time crazily on developing value props, taking it from weeks to hours. And the bottleneck here now becomes, let's say, before the operating system, the bottleneck was mostly writing capacity, so production of value proposition drafts and value propositions themselves. Whereas now the bottleneck kind of shifts to the quality of the inputs and the ability and the capacity to judge those drafts. And that's, of course, exactly where we would like our people to spend their time. All right. There was quite a run through of a little operating system here and a process, right? So let's look at an actual demo of how AI could be used here. And I thought it would be cool to do that based on an actual product from someone who's attending right now, reached out yesterday, and that person actually came back with a super cool product. He works at Jabra, and they just released their latest flagship product, Evolve 385. It was announced end of January, and it hit the market, I think, this month, so 2 weeks ago. It's designed for knowledge workers. It's let's say, they call it the best headset for modern work. And I think it would be cool to just show, based on a few spec sheets and product brochures here for a real product, what a pre-configured GPT could do here in taking you through the value proposition development methodology and spitting out a first draft. So let's dive in and look at exactly that. So here I have a pre-configured GPT. I will add some files here for it. So this is public documentation. We don't have a broad kind of, let's say, market research studies and competitive landscape analyses and kind of confidential data from Jabra here. We're working with a few docs that are available on the website. So we have a spec sheet here, and we have a user manual here, nothing else. So ideally, we would obviously feed our pre-configured AI with all the insights we are able to gather, structured according to the 4 C's properly. And now we're doing it based on this. So the output will be a bit generic, but you can see how it can run, and you can see the potential once you start feeding it like all of this proper information. All right. Let's zoom in a little here because the screen is not that big. So here I will say start generator, and it will take the product docs, and here we go. Okay, so what I've done is I built a custom GPT here. It's preloaded with our methodology I took you through, and now it's going through those documents, it's doing a bit of research on the back of that, and it starts to for us to understand, let's say, to break down the insights it's been fed together with the research it has done on the 4 C's that we have seen before. So first category, we get some data back on the market. The customer side, we get some data back on the ICP, the pains and the gains of them. So we see it's mostly meant for knowledge workers. We know that's true, right? Competition, it has done some competitor study here. It understands the competitive edge of our item over the other competitors, and then something around the company. So it first has gone through the actual structuring of the insights. And then we can also see, right, here we have simply no documents fed into the model that actually show the objective for this specific product. So here we would have to go back and ask for the product team probably, like, hey, what is it here that we're missing? What is it we're doing? And so on. And then here it starts in B. It starts to take those insights and starts to populate the elements from our framework here that we have decided this is the framework we want to use to make the right decisions about what the value proposition should look like. And it starts to apply this. And this is a simplified pre-configured GPT, right? So it starts to apply those insights here on those elements. And then it starts to translate that into a value proposition statement based on the actual elements from the value proposition framework, where we have been making decisions as to what to prioritize for whom. And the value proposition here, we start from a customer point of view, always taking departure in that reality. So let's say here we spend our day in meetings, calls, and multitasking across tools in hybrid environments. That's their context, which leads to distractions, poor communication quality, fatigue, and inefficient workflows. That's their problem. And then now we have that set. Now we position our product against it. But now with this new Jabra headset, you can communicate and interact with AI clearly from anywhere without distractions. Now, what enables that? The features by using X, Y, and Z. so that you stay focused, sound professional, get more done with less effort. I mean, it's still fairly generic, this, right? We have only fed it a spec sheet and a user manual. So imagine the level of detail we can get into this once we start to upload the right market research, sales pitches, and all of that, right? It gives a little example for a landing page, what that could look like. But the cool thing about building these GPTs or skills in Claude or agents in Copilot is that you can go a bit more nuts in how you would like to structure things, right? So for example, what we can do also, we can have it do a benchmark analysis. So we have our Jabra Evolve. What other assets could that line up against? And then we get an overview here. And then based on that, we can go in and understand, okay, it has done a bit of let's say, a competitive landscape analysis. What are other differentiation opportunities on top of what we have already understood from the uploaded materials? So maybe we need to lean harder into the AI first headset positioning, et cetera, et cetera. And then we get a updated value proposition here based on the suggestions after the competitive benchmark. And again, right, what we have fed into it was nothing more than a spec sheet and a user manual. So with the right inputs here, structured deeply, asked the right questions back, now we get to a draft in a minute, right? A minute instead of weeks of going back and forth and writing a first draft alone. And of course, this is an AI synthesized draft. Now we need to get the relevant stakeholders on board to review it. Well, that's a little demo of how you could set this up in whatever system you're using, right? Whether it's Claude, whether it's ChatGPT, whether it's Copilot, this can be done. So let's go back to the slides here. What does that mean for your team? So the draft took less than 60 seconds, right? So your expert review is really now the bottleneck, not writing the value prop. The output is structured because the methodology is baked in. The GPT doesn't know your customers, but you do. So here, right, structured input matters so much. Ideally, we would have fed it here also in the demo with a lot of customer details. We don't have that, but you may have that readily available, or you may have quick access to getting some insights on the topic here. So, and this is where the first step of briefing it, the structured input, is so important. And then we also see, right, like this isn't a magic button. It's not going to give you the best value proposition ever right out of the box. It's a production tool here inside of the process that still requires review and validation. But that is now where we spend our time, right? Not on writing the first value prop drafts, but really on making it crystal clear and crisp. So I would say the main question to take back to your team or organization, right, is do we have that standardized methodology in place? In the first place, is that robust enough to set up a pre-configured AI? If the question is no, that's really where you have to start with that methodology. Understanding how to structure insights, ask back the right questions, what framework do we use to develop a value proposition, and only then we can understand how to use AI in the workflow as a whole to scale that and multiply that even more. And then, of course, there is always here with AI moving fast and things popping up every day to make things incredibly better. Again, how far do you want to take it here? Today, we looked at, let's say, an AI-enabled process where we mostly look at the first parts of the process and using AI there to help us structure input and to help us develop first drafts. If that sounds a bit too ambitious to start with, you can take it a step back and do AI-assisted drafting and just feed your model a framework and tell it to fill this out, right? Then you lose out on the process, but you get to a first draft in hours instead of, let's say, a few weeks, or in minutes even, right, instead of hours. That might work if you're a one-product company or you have just a few products to do. If you operate large portfolios, the AI-enabled process will probably be a better way to start, or you could even start looking into a more of an agentic AI process where parts of also the other steps in the process benefit from the use of AI. And this you could, for example, already start doing in Claude by making one skill to run a value proposition development process, and then developing sub-skills for each part of the process here. Pretty cool place to start as well if you feel like that's the right place to start from the beginning. for me, some key takeaways here. This has been quite a lot for a few minutes, where unfortunately the first few minutes had a bit of an audio problem. I hope it's been better for most of the rest of the webinar. But I would say there is really three things other than the question I mentioned before to take back to your team, and that is the scale here is not a process, it's not a scale problem. It really is a process problem, right? So we have to fix that operating system first, because only then we can start automating. We really have to get a standardized framework, a standardized methodology with a clear understanding of how we use insights and inputs. What framework do we use to make decisions on the value proposition elements? And what process does that actually look like in terms of, for example, briefing, drafting, reviewing, validating, activating? What is the process there that we need to follow to make sure we can do this in a repeatable manner? That means that if we have these things in place, we can have our experts spend time where it matters, and that is on reviewing and validating and making decisions and judge, right? Rather than spending hours on plowing through insights and trying to crack their heads on doing a first draft. Because I would like to say the companies that win aren't necessarily the ones with the best products anymore, but they are really the ones that win, right? The ones who can articulate their value consistently, compellingly, and at scale. And this is why the value proposition development process here is so crucial for any organization that operates with a large portfolio of products. So where to start? I would say really go in, understand how do we do this today? How do we develop value props? Then really go in, define your methodology. What is the process here? How do we structure the insights? What is the framework we want to use to make decisions? How do we translate that into a value proposition statement? And how do we translate that into all of our customer touch points? And in that process, how do we review, validate, and activate that? And then I would also say, just start doing it. Just test something, see if it works. It's no big kind of, let's say, commercial transformation program here, right? We're talking about one aspect of, let's say, the go-to-market engine, which is value props. You don't need that program here. You need a replicable process, a repeatable process, and a pilot is a bit of a overused word maybe, right? But just try it out and test it, and then see how you can scale it from there. I would say that's it in terms of webinar content from my side. Thanks a lot for that. Feel free to reach out with any questions to me directly over email, a phone, or LinkedIn. Also write a bit, so if you want a copy of the latest publication I co-wrote together with some very talented colleagues of mine, feel free to reach out. I'll send you a free copy. And I post some stuff on LinkedIn every now and then around go-to-market related topics. Feel free to follow me there. Okay, with that being said, thanks a lot for taking the time out to join us today, and I wish you an amazing rest of the week.